Beyond fish oil. Omega-3 and the lipid balance of the body. Introduction. Omega-3 has been flattened into one of the most incomplete ideas in modern nutrition. It is usually presented as a simple health additive, a soft gel associated with the heart, the brain, inflammation, and a vague category called wellness. That framing is too small for the biology involved. Omega-3 does not matter because it is a trendy nutrient class or because it can slightly improve a lab marker. It matters because it enters the deepest structural layers of the body. It becomes part of membranes. It changes what cells are physically made of, how receptors move, how signals are interpreted, how inflammation begins, and whether inflammation can end cleanly once it has served its purpose. This book is built on the position that omega-3 cannot be understood in isolation because no lipid in the body operates in isolation. The body is a lipid-organized system, and once that is seen clearly, fish oil stops looking like a supplement category and starts looking like one small entry point into a much larger architecture. That architecture is the subject of this book. Its outline already centers that frame by moving from the body as a lipid system into membrane decision-making, into omega-3 and omega-6 pathways, and then into the biology of resolution rather than simple suppression. Most people have been taught to think about inflammation in only one direction. Something irritates the body, inflammatory pathways turn on, symptoms appear, and the goal becomes reducing those symptoms as quickly as possible. That model is incomplete because it treats inflammation as if it were only an activation problem. In reality, inflammation is a timed biological sequence. It starts, amplifies, performs work, and then must actively resolve. If that final phase fails, the system does not return to baseline. It stays partially activated, partially damaged, and metabolically expensive. This is where omega-3 biology becomes more important and more specific than the common conversation allows. EPA and DHA are not merely anti-inflammatory in the blunt sense of lowering output. They are upstream structural inputs for downstream resolution chemistry. They help create the conditions under which the body can stop recruiting unnecessary immune activity, clear debris, repair tissue, restore barriers, and exit inflammatory states without simply silencing the immune system. That is why this book goes beyond fish oil itself and into specialized pro-resolving mediators, failed resolution, membrane composition, and the threshold conditions required for the body to finish what it starts. This shift in perspective changes more than the way omega-3 is described. It changes the way chronic disease is understood. When membranes are built from unstable inputs, when omega-6 initiation pressure remains high, when oxidative stress damages polyunsaturated fats before they can be used properly, and when the body lacks the structural reservoir needed to generate resolution signals at the right time, symptoms that look separate begin to reveal a common substrate. Cardiovascular dysfunction, metabolic syndrome, neuroinflammation, persistent pain, immune irritability, and slow tissue recovery stop looking like unrelated failures. They begin to look like the predictable behavior of a system that can still initiate defense but has lost closure. The problem is no longer that the body does too much inflammation. The problem is that it does not complete inflammation well. It cannot exit efficiently because the structural conditions required for exit are missing. That is also why most omega-3 supplementation produces partial results. A person takes fish oil, notices modest improvement, and then plateaus. Another person feels nothing. Another feels worse and assumes omega-3 is overhyped or incompatible with their system. In many cases, the issue is not the concept of omega-3 itself. The issue is context. Omega-3 is being asked to enter membranes that remain damaged, energetically undersupported, and crowded by competing lipid signals. It is being expected to behave like a pharmacologic override when in reality it behaves more like a structural instruction set. Structural inputs require time, proportionality, and a compatible environment. They do not produce their highest effects when dropped into chaos and expected to fix it alone. That is why this book does not treat omega-3 as a magic bullet. It places omega-3 inside the wider lipid balance of the body, where saturated fats, phospholipids, membrane stability, oxidative protection, substrate competition, and resolution capacity all determine whether the signal carried by omega-3 can actually be received and used. The title Beyond Fish Oil is therefore literal. This is not a consumer guide to capsules, brands, or simplistic dosage advice. It is an attempt to restore the real scale of the topic. Fish oil is only the commercial surface of a deeper biological reality. Underneath, it is a lipid-based control system that governs membrane behavior, immune timing, receptor function, barrier integrity, neural stability, and long-horizon recovery. To understand omega-3 correctly, you have to understand the terrain it enters. You have to understand how modern diets distort membrane composition, why the omega-6 to omega-3 conversation became both oversimplified and distorted, how SBM biology fills in the missing half of inflammation science, and why resolution is not passive, is built. It depends on stored material, enzymatic access, membrane placement, and enough physiological stability for the body to permit completion. This book is written for the reader who is no longer satisfied with slogans. It is for the person who has heard that omega-3 is good for them, but has never been given a serious explanation of what that actually means. It is for the clinician, coach, researcher, or patient who has watched inflammation remain chronically active despite years of symptom management. It is for anyone willing to replace the supplement model with the structural model. Once you do that, many of the contradictions disappear. Omega-3 stops being mysterious. The inconsistency of results becomes understandable. The apparent randomness of chronic inflammatory disease starts to look patterned. And the next step becomes clearer. Stop asking what fish oil does in the abstract and start asking what kind of body can actually use omega-3 to restore order.